some political forces are gaining momentum in Europe that cater to the national interests in France and Germany and Hungary, headed by Viktor Orban, who has been at helm for quite long. So I haven't been following their domestic political developments, but I'll bet the majority of the Hungarians want to remain Hungarians and will support Orban. Otherwise, they'll support von der Leyen if they don't want to remain Hungarians. So if the forces that I've mentioned in Europe have been gathering pace, Europe will be revived, but that depends not on us but on Europe. Mr. President, you know, these days off the shores of France, an oil-filling tanker was seized. They have demonstrated their sovereignty. So sooner or later, that is related to Russia, although the flag is different. This is piracy, filibusterism. Well, the tanker has been seized in neutral waters without any grounds. Probably they were seeking some military cargoes like the UAVs or other items. It had none and couldn't have had. And the tanker sailed under a third country flag, and there was an international crew. I'm not sure whether that was related to Russia, but you know, this fact has happened. And what is that? And is that important for France? Well, it is, depending. Well, given the very, very difficult domestic political situation, and the French political leadership can, in no other way, distract the attention of the people from the challenges that are hard to resolve inside the Republic. So this is why they want to pass the buck and move the focus to the borderline and egg on different countries like Russia and provoke us so that we act actively and tell the French people, join me and close ranks around me. I'll lead you to victory like Napoleon. But actually, this is the gist of it.
I believe you've been too kind towards the President of France. You know, I do it gladly. We have strictly working relationship, but what is happening right now is exactly as I've told you. I have no doubt. I know him well.
Van Charlie. From the Center of Russian Studies in Shanghai. Mr. President, I'm really glad to see you once again. I totally agree with you, with your point of view. We need to get back to classical diplomatic approaches. It's time. But in recent month and a half, you successfully finished two important official visits. First of all, Russian-American summit in Alaska, and the second one was with the SCO and then the military parade in Beijing. So let me ask you this. What are the specific results of those summits? And what's the importance of those visits? Is there any connections there? Are there any results that would help us to improve the international situation? Thank you.
First of all, you've started with a visit to the United States, to Alaska. We haven't discussed with Mr. Trump of any kind of bilateral matters. We've only spoken about the means and ways of resolving the Ukrainian crisis. I believe overall it's a great result, and the President Trump, we've known each other for a long time. And of course he likes to speak, and everyone sees it. But it's also the kind of person who can truly listen, who can hear what you're saying. He responds to what you're saying. So he's quite a comfortable person to speak to. And us attempting to search and find possible ways of resolving the Ukrainian crisis is quite significant. And that was the first point. The second point, even though we've just breached it attemptively, it's the U.S. and Russian relations that are not at a dead end, but it's at quite an early stage. And the very fact of our meeting, of this visit, and I'm very grateful to the President for organizing it, I believe it's all signs that lead to the restoration of bilateral relations, and that is great for us in the bilateral scope, but for the international community as a whole. And now approaching my visit to China, when we've spoken with my friend, I believe that the President of China is my dear friend. We have established very friendly, trustworthy relations. He told me that himself, that we in China, and he didn't say that for the whole world to hear, he said that to me personally, that we welcome the reestablishment and restoration of U.S.-Russian relations, and we will try to assist it in any way possible. But of course my visit to the Chinese People's Republic was wider in a scope, because together we've celebrated the end of the Second World War. The result of this joint fight of Russia and China. Russia, first of all, on the track of combating Nazism. And then, of course, together combating the Japanese militarism, have contributed significantly. I've already mentioned it. Just look at the colossal sacrifices that Russia and China have made to the altar of this victory. And secondly, of course, on our side, as well as from China when he came to celebrate the 9th of May, we stay true to this spirit of allyship. So I believe, in this sense, the visit to China was of global, fundamental nature. And of course this allowed us, on the sidelines of these events, to discuss the world situation, to compare our points of view on the development of bilateral relations in the humanitarian, cultural, educational areas. For next year and forward, we've decided to announce the years of education. And that speaks for the fact that we want to work. We work, and we will continue to work with the youth. This is the future outlook. That is why this visit was so important. And some initiatives of the Chinese president on the global governance, they align with our ideas of Eurasian security, to compare our notes, because this was truly of global nature, not just bilateral nature. So I highly assess the results of that visit, and I believe this was another important step forward in the development of our relations.
Mr. President, you are the first leader in the world who called Trump a comfortable person to talk to.
You see, I speak from the heart. As I've already mentioned, of course he likes using big words and speaking point blank and just directly tackling the issue, but he's, as I've already mentioned, protecting his national interests as he sees fit. But sometimes it's easier to hear a direct approach, to understand, instead of ambiguous phrasings. And I'm not saying it just to pay a compliment. We've talked for an hour and a half. I've presented my position and he listened attentively. He did not interrupt me. Then I listened to him very closely. We've changed our opinions. These are very complex issues. I will not go into detail because we don't do that. But he said that this will be complicated. Yes, of course. Obviously. We started to go into certain details. We have discussed them. There was a discussion. There was a discussion. I believe you should do this, you should do that, take off your hat. No. There was none of that. Of course, it is important that this leads to a logical conclusion, that there are definite results, but it is a complicated process. And I say that constantly, that it's important to reach a balance of interests, to reach a consensus. It is difficult. But if we approach this, and if we reach those results during the discussion, then these are truly tremendous agreements, and we can hope that they're long-lasting.
Did you tell him anything about the history of Ukraine?
No, that's not funny. I've spoken about this with my other American colleagues. We've truly discussed of possible ways of resolution. We've been quite frank. We've spoken honestly. It's hard to predict what will come out of it. But we will continue. We're ready to continue this discussion.
Whose idea was it to meet in Alaska?
Does it really matter? The important thing is that we did meet. But we were comfortable in Alaska. You see, they still have Orthodox presence there. They have Orthodox churches. People come to services, and the services are delivered in English. And for certain commemorative events, once that English service is over, the father, just addressing the Russian community, says the word, "I congratulate you," in Russian, and everyone responds in Russian as well. It's a true testament.
Mr. President, you mentioned economic sanctions against Russia. There is an unprecedented number of them. You just spoke about Orthodox churches and our patriarch, Cyril. Also, there were sanctions imposed against him. Our economy survived. It showed that it was quite resistant as it comes to sanctions, and our friends and our opponents were surprised at the resilience of our economy. We'll have to live with sanctions for decades, if not more. How would you assess their impact on our economy, and what do we need to do to make sure our economy is resilient in the long run?
It's true, I've mentioned it in my address. That our path hasn't been an easy way. It has been a responsible one. We've tried to raise the level of our independence and sovereignty, of economic sovereignty, financial sovereignty. What have we done? First of all, we have significantly changed our main trade partners. We have reshaped the logistics of work with our partners. We have changed the payment system. And all of this is functioning. But in today's world, it's not enough. We have to pay more attention to solving other issues, and first and foremost is the further diversification of our economy. It has to be modernized. It has to use more high technology. We have to restructurize the work market, how to pay all of these workers. We have to use more high technology. We have to raise the effectiveness of that work. And it means that higher salaries paid to higher qualified personnel. But we also have paid more attention to those who earn less, because people who earn less, who earn more, they spend more money on domestic products, which means the growth for our local markets. Of course, we can reinforce our financial system. And here it's important to achieve two results. First of all, we need to continue reinforcing our macroeconomic stability, lowering the inflation. But at the same time, we need to preserve the positive speed of economic growth. We've achieved 4.3%, which is much larger than international figures. But at the end of last year, we've said that in order to defeat the inflation, we have to unfortunately sacrifice the record-setting growth rate, which is why the central bank lowered the key rate, which affects the economy. We will conduct the events that have to do with the forced freezing of the economy, but we will sacrifice this growth in order to restore the macroeconomic figures so that the economy stays healthy as a whole. So there are a lot of government-made decisions about the taxation, about the added value, and it's important not to allow for the shade economy to take over. So these are the key goals in short term. Those are just fundamental points. As for our economy, our relatively small external debt and relatively low budget deficit. This year it was 2.6. Next year we plan for 1.6. At the same time, the debt load is, the state debt is lower than 20%, which allows us to assume that even if the added value will raise, which of course will affect the economic growth, and we understand that because all the taxation affects the economy, but this will also allow us to find a better balance for the central bank when it comes to dealing with economic issues with key rate, but also for the government when it comes to expenditure budget, when they set their own parameters, creating conditions for further development. So all of this in complex allows us, first of all, to assume that we have come a long and winding road, but at the same time gives us reassurance that not only have we passed this stage, but we have enough reason and enough means to continue moving forward.
Alexander Kuich. Mr. President, my name is Alexander Akovic. I'm a historian from Serbia, Belgrade. And my question is as follows. What do you think about the attempts to stage colored revolution in Serbia?
I agree with President Vucic. But our secret services confirm that certain Western centers take attempts to organize these color revolution in Serbia. You see, there are always people, especially young people, who don't understand much about current issues, who don't know enough of history of these issues and the consequences that the illegitimate forms of shift of power lead to, especially the color revolution. What did the color revolution in Ukraine lead to? I believe everyone understands that. These revolutions are unconstitutional, illegitimate seizure of power, to speak frankly. Usually it doesn't lead to anything good. Usually it's easier to stay true to the law, to the Constitution. As for the effect on the youth, it's usually the easiest ways to affect the minds of the youth, which is why I've spoken about our young girls and young guys who use the Russian symbols when they wear them in public, when they're carrying that with pride. This is the basis of the self-identity and the protection from the external pressure. And the youth in Serbia, even those who go outside, they're patriots at their core. And it's important to continue dialogue with them. They should never forget how much suffering the Serbian people have gone through before the First World War, during the First World War,